Hello everyone, my name is Kyle. I'm a professional landscaper and I'm here to give a review of the John Deere Z925A. I bought this thing used several years back and it has been a wonderful mower. I couldn't have been happier, and I'm going to show you the ins and outs, and I'm going to give you the whole tour of the tractor, show you the pros and cons, some things that I do like, some things that I don't like, and we'll just go from there. So before I start the tour of the mower, I am going to state that this is a non-biased review. I'm not being paid by John Deere at all. This is my own personal mower. I paid for this with all the pocket change that I could scrounge around, if you know what I'm saying. So let's get on with it. The John Deere Z925A is part of John Deere's commercial line mowers, the 900 series. This one in particular has a 60-inch deck, is the 7-iron Pro deck, and features a 27 horsepower Kawasaki V-twin engine. Now this Kawasaki motor I have not had any problems with whatsoever. It just runs and runs and runs. It doesn't drink oil that much. It really just haven't had many problems with it at all. It starts every time. It's got plenty of power to go through the tough stuff. One thing to note is that it is a little bit fuel hungry. It does drink quite a bit of fuel. That's not really that big of a deal to me, but for some people that are on a budget, it might be something to consider. Also, along with many commercial grade zero turns, it is rather loud. You know, when they design these things, they don't really think about the noise that much. They think about the functionality, and noise kind of is a second thought. Now, I believe John Deere came out with 2 engine models for this. The one being a 27 horsepower Kawasaki. This one is carbureted. And I think a 25 horsepower Kohler EFI engine. Let's take a look at the mower deck. This is a 60-inch deck, 3-blade, and I'm rather impressed. It's 7-gauge steel, but it's stamped steel. To manufacture a stamped steel deck that is 7-gauge, it must have taken some hydraulic press to stamp that out, I'm sure. I'm not really knowledgeable on the manufacturing process, but that's just what I assume. The spindles are very nice. Haven't had any problem with them either. Just keep them greased up. As long as you do that, they'll last a long time. This actually gets a very good quality of cut. I am very impressed. I was kind of skeptical, you know, with John Deere having good cut quality, but that soon changed my mind after I actually started using it in the field. It stripes beautifully, and I don't have a striping kit on this or anything. Although John Deere does sell striping kits for this, it actually mounts on the rear caster wheel and goes to the other caster wheel right where I'm pointing right there. It's just a bar. You probably know what it is. Just pass down the grass so that it gives you that very nice baseball stadium look whenever you cut the lawn. The blades that I have on this mower are John Deere's high lift blades. I feel like it gets the best cut quality out of all the different blade types because it lifts up the grass blades and then slices them. I also think that it gets a lot better clipping dispersal than, say, mulching blades or other stuff. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. You may have different experiences with your mower, but I'm just telling you what I think is right for what I use it for. Some John Deere mowers actually came with what is called a mulch on demand, which is basically you have a pedal right here that you push down, and what it does is it has a flap that closes it temporarily so that when you're mowing in a certain area you don't spray grass onto, say, a flower bed or onto the sidewalk or in the road. It's not really meant for mulching per se. It's really just meant so that you don't get clippings in places where you don't want to go. This one doesn't have it. I'm sure that they probably came out with models that actually featured this, but I am not quite sure. I know the newer models do feature that. The clipping dispersal on this mower is actually very good. It will throw the clippings from there all the way to there. You won't have that many clumps. It really doesn't pack up underneath the deck that much unless you're, you know, mowing really sopping wet grass, but If you're mowing sopping wet grass, that's really not a good thing to do anyway. It's not really great for these things. I mean, you got to do what you got to do in the business, but I personally don't care about doing that. Sitting here in the cockpit, you see you have a very wide open space. Your feet are basically sitting on steel, and you do have some grip on here. I'm not wearing my boots, but you do have grip on here if your boots get a little bit muddy or slippery. Right here is your emergency brake. Now, a lot of zero turns actually have the e-brake right here or right here, where it's similar to a car where you just pull it up. But this one's a little bit strange. The e-brake is actually on the floor, and there's actually a good reason for this, but I'll get to that later. How you operate this one is a little bit tricky. You have to use the tip of your toe, push down on this little pad right here. Oop, didn't do it. And it pops out, and now the e-brake is off and you're ready to go. To engage the e-brake, you just push it in, and that's it. It's really simple to use, but a lot of people, I'm sure, probably really didn't care for this design because it is a little bit irritating, especially with some slippery shoes or boots, to activate and press on that little tab down there to pull that brake out. Now, the real reason why they decided to put the e-brake on the floor is because, say all of a sudden your engine dies. Now, these hydrostatic transmissions, they don't really have any brakes, so your intention, if your engine stops and you're on a hill and you're sliding down the hill, your first instinct is to basically pull back on both levers. And of course, when the engine's not running, it's not going to be doing anything. So what they did is basically they put the pedal on the ground because you're in a kind of a panic situation where you're trying to pull back on here, and you're pretty much in a cage unless you like perfectly line them up and then get out. But then right here would normally be your e-brake. Well, that's kind of an awkward place to go when you're in a panic. I mean, you could probably do it. I've never been in that situation where I had to, nor do I really plan on being that anyway. But I think the whole point is to basically slam your foot on the ground like that to get you to stop. That's my personal guess. Let me know in the comment section what you think it would actually be used for. So here's your control panel. Really not that much there. As you know, that's your PTO. Nothing special about that. This is kind of an interesting thing that John Deere did, and I like it, but at the same time, I'm not a fan of it. Now, a lot of zero turns, they have pins. Pretend that there's a pin bar right here, where you'd basically lift the deck with your feet, and then you set the pin to your height. That means that you really can't change your height on the fly. So what they did, to change your height, you basically push the pedal down, unlock it by twisting this yellow cap, and then letting go. And now it's at 4 inches. That's normally what I mow at. And to lock it into its travel position, you push down the pedal and you lock it and then let go. It's that simple. And to change your height, you have to have it all the way down, but you have to depress the pedal all the way. Then it's simple. You see this little tab right here? It lines up with your cut height, and it goes in 1/4 inch increments, so you can go down all the way down to 1.5 if you so choose to do so, all the way up to 5 inches. But I'm going to keep it at 4 because that's just what I'm comfortable with doing, and a lot of my customers really like that height of cut. So this is the hour gauge. Nothing really special here, not really worth showing off, but it does have some interesting features on this one in particular. I know a lot of other zero turns have it nowadays. It does have some warning lights and what I like to call idiot lights. That's just what I like to call it. Basically, it just flashes some stuff if you're trying to start it. For example, if you have the foot pedal out and you turn it, it kind of flashes a code at you. And then there's actually a code right here where you kind of look at the blinking lights, and then it just kind of gives you a basic diagnostic of what you're doing or what's wrong with the machine. But again, I really don't mess with that. The segment gauge on this is a little bit wonked out. I think it got hit sometime during its life because there is a few segments missing. Normally you won't have that problem, but this actually says 730.5 hours. Over here, right next to where your hip would be, your throttle and your choke, this is not factory. I actually installed this because I wanted headlights on this thing, but that turned out to be an epic failure because I bought the wrong lights, and they were really cheap lights that I found at a yard sale. So I just kept the switch in there because otherwise there'd just be an ugly hole in there. There's actually a cutout for where a switch of some kind would be. I presume it might be for a headlight kit. I know John Deere actually does make a headlight kit that you can buy. On the left side you have a cup holder, which is actually oversized, so you can actually fit a full-size Nalgene bottle in here, which is very nice. I really like that about this. And of course a fuel gauge. And this only has a single fuel tank, but it holds about, I think it holds around 10 to 12 gallons of gas. I'm not quite sure. Some other things to note. This thing has a lot of storage compartments all over the thing. Down by your feet you have 1, 2 little storage compartments. Not sure what you would fill in there. Maybe you find a ball that you don't want to mow over, or you know, anything that you wouldn't put in there. I showed you the cup holder. You come around behind the seat, there's a net, and I actually had a pair of jumper cables and a small pull rope in here. Now I just have some ratchet straps and bungee cords. But you can put anything you want in there. I think it would be a good idea to have trimmer line in there or some basic tools in case you get stuck out in the field. You also have a storage compartment right here, right behind the column. I don't know where any of this came from. To access underneath, to access the transmission and the undersides, you can actually raise the seat. There's a lever right here. All you have to do is pull up and the whole seat lifts up. Now at first glance you might think, wow, there's really not too much activity in here. Well, I mean, your battery, that's your hydraulic reservoir for your hydrostatic transmission. Yeah, really not too much in here. The hydrostatic drive, the pumps and the motors are actually underneath here. That can be kind of a pain when you have to go and clean them off. However, they do have, excuse my my camera skills, there is a little bit of a gate where you can actually take that little plastic shield off. That allows for some cooling. You can stick an air hose down there and get all the grass and dirt and stuff off of them so that your pumps and motors won't overheat. Since we're looking at pretty much nothing, I might as well explain the transmission. Of course, it has twin hydrostatic transmissions for each wheel, left and right. And I'm actually very impressed with these transmissions. They're pretty darn rugged. I don't abuse them or pop wheels with them. I'm sure you could if you so wanted to. But yeah, they're very responsive transmissions. All you have to do is just touch those levers and it will go. Very sensitive, but that's kind of a good thing. You can also adjust how sensitive you want those arms to be, whether you want them to be a little bit light where you have to push a little bit more for it to go, or if you want it to be very stiff where you just touch it and it goes. Some models actually did feature a hydraulic deck lift, which is very nice. It actually had a button here and a button here right on the control arms, which is actually nice. If you have to go over a curb or a root or some rocks, you could easily just press the button and the whole deck just lifts up temporarily so that you can, you know, go over it. On the other side, if you had that option, there would be a button that would be another way to kill the PTO. Essentially the same thing as you just slapping it down, except you just push a button. However, that button will not re-engage the mower deck, which is kind of odd. I guess it's probably just some kind of emergency shut-off. That's what I presume that's what that was for. Let's dive right on into how this thing is constructed. Let's take a look at the caster mounts and the frame. Now, this is actually a pretty beefy frame. I'm actually rather impressed. And also the spindles, they're pretty beefy as well. They also have grease fittings, which is a must-have for longevity. Everything is very well made, which was very surprising. The frame is really thick. It's about 5/16 of an inch thick, which is some pretty thick steel. Let's also look at the deck. Sorry. The deck, like I said, is 7-gauge steel. It's stamped steel. But if you look closely here, see that belt? The belt is right around a 1/2 inch thick steel. So that's basically so that if you just bump into a root or a rock or something, it doesn't bend the deck. Nice feature. Everything else is pretty much about 1/4 inch thick, give or take. Some of it's cast, some of it's stamped. Pretty good quality. There are some parts that I am kind of skeptical about, and I'll show you. Okay, let's go over some of the construction of this. And the metal that's used all over this is just oversized and beefy as all heck. The metal of this, it's about 5/16 thick steel for the frame. That's very good to see. You want this to last for a long time in the field. These things are meant to run every day, all day, 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week if you're really hardcore, I guess. So they really got to take up to the abuse of the terrain. So everything is beefy. These caster bearing, just everything is just beefy. It has grease points all over it. I'm very impressed. The rest of the frame is about 1/4 inch thick, the 3/16 inch thick stamped sheet metal. Some of it is cast like this. Again, I'm very impressed on the construction. The foot plate comes out. I'm doing this one-handed, sorry. The foot plate comes out for easy maintenance. You're looking at the middle blade, spindle, and everything. And even, speaking of which, let's look at the spindles. Spindles are actually pretty beefy as well. Right on top is a grease point so that you can lubricate your spindles, which is a good thing. Like I said, these things aren't exactly the cheapest things around, so you want to keep them for as long as possible. Let's see, what else? Okay, here's one thing that might take some of you by surprise. The outside case of this, just the shell, is actually made out of plastic. Now, don't immediately think, oh, it's plastic, it's junk. Not necessarily. This is some pretty thick plastic, pretty rugged. You're not going to be banging into this a whole lot. If it gets hit, it will just deflect it, it'll absorb it, no big deal. I mean, they didn't make, okay, John Deere didn't make some parts beefy that really isn't necessary to be beefy. That's just the thing. This is all, I mean, this is all thick plastic. It's all designed to be in the field and everything. Let's look at the back of the mower. I didn't even show you this part. I really like the look of it, look of the whole mower. It's very attractive, at least to me. Let's look at the bumper. That bumper is a serious bumper. That is some thick metal. They call it a bumper for a reason, so that you can bump. It's not like your car bumper where it's made out of foam, or at least new cars where it's just made out of plastic. I'm talking old stuff. This is steel, so that say you just back into stuff, which, you know, it happens, accidents happen. You back into something, back into a tree, back into whatever, it's not going to completely obliterate the mower. I mean, your engine is right here. That is the heart of the mower. You do not want that thing to get damaged if you can help it due to negligence. So they installed this bumper. Now also you can have attachments onto this bumper. What I did is I actually got, no, this actually came with it. It's basically just a tow, just a regular, just a tow accessory. So you can tow a small lawn a small trailer or a cedar or whatever you want. I wouldn't really recommend this for towing anything massive. I would probably get a much larger tractor for that. You really don't want to stress these hydros too much. They're not really designed to tow a huge amount of weight. Now, this is where the roll bar normally is, but everything here, that's about 1/4 inch thick steel. Very beefy. That's also part of the frame itself. I'm very happy about that. Now, the roll bar, this normally has a roll bar, and it worked fine until I loaned it out to my friend, and he was a dumbass and he flipped it over and it destroyed the roll bar. Saved him, thank goodness, but no damage to the rest of the mower, but it just completely destroyed the roll bar, so I just took it off. I really don't mow on that many slopes anyway, so no real big danger. So, how much? Well, this particular model, the Z925A, isn't manufactured anymore. However, they pretty much still make the line of this, and they're almost exactly the same. Maybe some differences here and there. They probably have different engine models and whatnot, and probably some feature here and a feature there, or you know, stuff like that. But comparable units would be the Z930M and everything like that. Very similar to this. So if you can't find a Z925A, you can probably find that. Now, a new unit or a comparable one for this, it would cost you around $14,000 brand new. It's a little bit on the high side. It's not the most expensive mower around, but it's certainly not on the lower end scale. You do have to pay some pennies for that. Used ones will definitely be more forgiving on your wallet. It will cost around $4,500 to $8,000. That's fairly reasonable, although you can probably find other units that would be lower in cost to fit your budget, but definitely this is a mower to consider. Now, because it is a John Deere and it is commercial grade, prices are going to be slightly higher in terms of maintenance costs and, you know, repairs and, you know, other parts like that. Mainly because this is green and has a running Deere on it, John Deere. But also because it's commercial grade, they tend to jack up the prices for commercial grade units, and you know, that's kind of a normal thing. So the pros, I think it's a great mower for large properties. It could be used for heavy commercial use. It could even be used for residential use. If, say, you have lots and lots of acres that you have to mow and you want to get it done quickly, or if you really just want a really good looking lawn that makes your neighbors jealous, definitely a good unit to consider, because the cut quality is great. It's rather durable. It's actually compact. You can stack it on some trailers rather easily compared to some other units. It also has a lot of user convenience options on here. The engines are powerful. I do like the Kawasaki engines on here. They do make some with Kohler engine models. I don't think they make anything with any other engine manufacturer, as far as I'm aware. I haven't heard any, you know, Briggs & Stratton or Honda engine versions of these that I am aware of. But either way, they work well. I feel like these are actually fairly easy on turf. I feel like they're a very well-balanced unit. They can actually take on some mild slopes pretty well, even in some wet conditions, because it's just very well balanced. Normally you don't want to take a zero turn on a hill anyway. A little bit of a safety risk there. Don't want to get killed. But I've done it, and well, I'm here, and I'm still alive, and I'm breathing. So do at your own risk, of course, but I do think that this is a very well-balanced unit. Fairly easy on the turf to a certain extent. Now, with every product that has a lot of great sides, there's always going to be some things that might make you ponder about, some negatives, but it's really not that big of a deal. So number one is if you're concerned about fuel, then you might want to steer toward one with probably an EFI option, because this does consume quite a bit of fuel, surprisingly, even to compared to some other engines. It does consume quite a bit, that I have found, and I have this thing tuned right. It's running perfect, and it's really not a big bother to me per se, but it might be a bother to some people, so I just thought I'd mention it. Some parts that I wish were made out of metal are made out of plastic. It's just that cheapness that I kind of don't like. It's very chintzy, but it's not very chintzy. The biggest thing I'm concerned about is the height of cut adjustment. It is totally made of plastic, and the top cap is made out of a cheap ABS plastic, which I have heard those commonly get broken over time when they get old and brittle and used a lot. But I'm sure you can probably buy a new one. But I haven't had that problem because I'm not very harsh with my equipment, but opinions may differ. Like a lot of Zero Turns, they don't really have that much aftermarket accessories for this one in particular. I've searched online and I found a few here and there, but really the results were inconclusive. So aftermarket accessories is pretty much very little to none. If you want accessories for this, you pretty much have to just go right to John Deere and then pay an arm and a leg for an accessory, such as a bagging unit. I was considering actually getting a bagging unit for this, but John Deere wanted quite a bit of money for it, so I said, nah. If noise is really your concern, then you really shouldn't even be looking at this mower, because any commercial grade mower is going to be rather noisy. They're not designed to be quiet. They're designed to function and last a long time and do their job really well. And like any commercial grade equipment, the noise is rather loud, so I do recommend hearing protection. Up to you, of course. Now, this mower is rather heavy. It weighs about 1,400 pounds. It's not the heaviest, it's not the lightest, but I think it's right around the middle to high. You just have to be diligent when you're driving these Zero Turns so that you don't completely tear up the ground when you're making sharp turns. Always make sure that you do your 3-point turns when you're taking another pass. So, the bottom line, would I recommend this? Absolutely. It's a great mower. It mows great. I really like it a lot. I haven't had hardly any problems with this unit, and I've had this for several years, and I've racked up the hours on it. I can start it. I don't want to drive it around because we did have rain last night, so the ground is a little bit soft, but I'll start it up for you. Well, I hope you found this either entertaining, helpful, or informational, or you just wanted to just see another piece of John Deere because you're a John Deere fanboy. But either way, thank you for watching. Hope this was helpful, entertaining, or whatnot. Thanks.